Hello, welcome to today's issue of Greet the Week. And Jan is the one that's going to lead us off today on our topic, and it has something to do with personal freedom. So what do you have on your mind, Jan?
Well, I've been thinking a lot about personal freedom and just, but mostly about the whole victim mentality. And I don't want to go on a negative note called, let's talk about victim mentality. So I'm turning it around and say, well, let's talk about personal freedom, because to me, I believe those are two ends of the scale. And I'm very involved with the rebranding of the Glasser Institute, and we keep bringing that up about personal freedom. And personal freedom is something that apparently is talked a lot about these days in the media. And I'm not into a lot of those conversations because I kind of seclude myself from some of these things. But I think it's worth talking about it. And Dr. Glasser, in his book, Choice Theory, the subtitle was A New Psychology of Personal Freedom. And when you think about when I take ownership of my life, of myself, and instead of thinking that, all these horrible things are happening to me, and that I have no control over it, well, there are things that I can do. No matter how tough my life is, there's always something that I can do to make it better. But I need to take that freedom and run with it.
Yeah, I like the fact that one of the things that you, in the little blurb for what we want to talk about today, that you put on there, can we be dependent on others for our own happiness?
Yeah.
And I like to look at things, you're talking about being victimized. Well, in the one is the whole, and in the whole is everything. And so that victim, is for going under, also has within it a buoyancy to be a victor.
Yes.
Overcome.
Yes. Right.
And overcome.
Right.
And so are we responsible for our own happiness? Well, instead of looking at either or, you have this choice. Is it behind this door? Is it behind this door? Well, instead of looking at either or, I like to look at both and.
Mm-hmm.
Meaning, yes, I am responsible for my own happiness, but it is in conjunction with everyone else around me.
Yes.
And how I respond to them, and how I interact with them, and keep that freedom flowing.
Yeah, and that brings to mind this one exercise that I went through where they were talking about people who are gay and who are coming out and letting people know that they're gay, and they talk about all the friends and family that they lose in the process. And to me, when you're focusing on all the people that you're losing, you're taking that victim role instead of saying, you and I are good friends. How come you're letting this thing come between us? And it brings back memory of my dad when I got divorced from my first husband. I mean, he was devastated he's not devastated, but he just did not approve of it, and he would not talk to me for months. But I would not let him move away from me. I said, hey, I'm still the same person.
Right.
And so it's like where we take control of our lives, we take control over who's friends with us and who isn't, and make the effort to say, hey, well, let's talk about this. Let's try to understand where each of us is coming from, instead of just saying, oh, there's another person I lost. Woe is me. This thing, nobody can accept me. Just nobody understands. And well, maybe you're part of it. You need to take a initiative to help people to understand and show that you still care.
So it's more for understanding rather than agreement.
Mm-hmm.
As in, sometimes we have those divisions there, and we are not, we become terribly unhappy because someone else doesn't agree with us.
Right.
And if it's to understand where they're coming from, and with that understanding, the thing of it is that all of us believe what we believe until we believe something else. And so sometimes as we begin to think about the way they understood something, just mull about it, just think about it, just consider it, we might begin to see, okay, there's a little bit of truth there. Mm-hmm. Or I can see how they would maybe think that way, whether I'm thinking that way now or not. And sometimes as we begin to do both and, we can come to an agreement that I care about you as an individual, even though there may be some aspects of your personality that is rather off-putting to me.
Right, right.
And whether that's just being a sourpuss or whether it, being so jovial that you never can take anything serious, because we can take all these things to extreme.
We can, absolutely. And sometimes you've never even considered the opposing view. And for somebody to bring it up and to talk about it, you think, all right, I never really thought about it that way. Maybe I'll put a little thought into it and try to learn more. Tell me more. Help me to understand more about what's going on.
Right, and where they're coming from. And acceptance doesn't mean approval.
No,
that I accept you as you are. And boy, is that ever freeing.
Right, right.
Just to accept the person, warts and all, glamour and all, just everything about the person. Just accept.
You don't have to fit my quality world picture of who I think you should be. You don't have to do that. I can still accept you for who you are, even though I don't agree with everything you're doing. I still love you. I still support you, and I still you're still an important part of my life. And
we can get along reasonably well.
Reasonably well. Maybe that's what you want to avoid.
One of the definitions of happiness is, being able to get along reasonably well with those near and dear to you.
Right.
And they also being reasonably well to get along with you, as in not being overly difficult.
Yeah. Because you think about like trying to please a parent or a spouse, where you're trying to do the things that they want you to do and live up to that picture that they have. Because you have an idea.
That you think they have of you.
Well, that's true. That's true. That you think they have of you. That's exhausting. And it's not need satisfying. And
it's futile.
Right. It can really bring you down. And that's no way to be.
Yeah. And if we're trying to make ourselves be what we think someone else wants us to be, then we're denying who we are.
Right.
And that definitely is the basis of unhappiness.
Oh, absolutely.
And discontentment and sickness even.
Yeah.
Because our body, we are made to be who we are, and all the organs and everything needs to flow together. And if we just get so cramped up trying to please someone else, and that's not to say that we deliberately in your face are ugly, hateful.
No.
It's just not that trying to please everyone.
Right.
It's realizing that out of all the people in the universe, whether they are born in our family, married in, neighbors, whatever, that just pretty much automatically there's going to be about a third of them that you're drawn to, about a third of them that, you can just take it or leave it one way or the other, and approximately a third of them that you're going to be kind of repelled by. And or they by you.
Right. Yes.
So it's taking all of those odds into accountability and realizing the fact that although we're not going to bet on it, for getting into addictions and so forth, we're going to realize that I do need to be true to me, but not at the expense of being deliberately off-putting to someone else.
Right. Yeah.
And then also give them that same freedom.
Right. You need to take into consideration what they want and who they are, and just understand whether you want that relationship to work. And if you do, then you do make some sacrifices, and you do watch your speech and maybe rephrase some things. But it doesn't. But you can still be yourself. You can still be you when you do that.
Right. And then what about that relationship do you want? Do you want healthy interaction and understanding, or do you want someone to not have purple hair?
Yeah.
You know what? If the purple hair is the only thing that is... What, Jerry?
I say, I'll take hair of any color.
You
oh, gotcha.
purple
Gotcha.
or anything else. I don't care. I'd be happy with purple hair.
Right. You know, or the
Well, I'm of a generation in which that was pretty much unheard of
Yeah.
up until 10 years ago. But let me ask you ladies a question. Have you noticed that some people are very, very inclined to make themselves into victims?
Oh,
Frequently.
sure.
I think so.
Not all the time, but frequently.
Yeah.
I see sometimes people will take a phrase and they'll turn it into something, making themselves into a victim when you had no intention of that at all. And I don't know what causes that, but I guess it's a lifetime of being beat up, maybe, or something. I don't know what. But
Well, you know what? One thing that prompted me to come up with this topic for this year was, I'm not on Facebook a lot, but I'm on enough, and I see a lot of posts of people taking that victim role and of blaming, shaming others, and I just look at that and I shake my head, and I think it's becoming an epidemic, you know, since other people are doing it, you know, so, oh, well, now I can do it too, and they kind of work together, because you see so many, or it's repost this, and you know, to show that you support it, or whatever. And I want to say, just what are you doing about it? You're going and you're shaming other people, and you're trying to make it look like, you know, what they're doing is such a terrible thing. But what, you don't have to listen to what they say. You don't you have to agree with what they say. And what
You don't have to eat it.
Yeah.
And regurgitate it.
To show that you're really any better. And I think it is an epidemic out there. And I don't talk a lot, but the few times I have made presentations, you know, people will say, well, you're blaming the victim. And I'm like, I'm not blaming anybody. That's what you heard. I'm not blaming. I'm just trying to say, hey, there's another way to look at this. Let's not look out there and expect other people to change so that I feel more comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling uncomfortable. What's in that? What can I do am I really secure in my belief system? Am I really secure in what I'm saying that I stand for? And if I'm going to be hurt every time you make some argument against it, then I'm not really secure in what I'm doing.
Right.
You don't realize that. The people that are doing that don't realize that.
Yeah.
It just comes almost naturally without even thinking about it. It's just, you know,
And
it's over and over again.
Is when we come into learning to self-evaluate and to reflect and to see how we are I know a couple of things that I like to do personally again and again and again, because there's always a different answer sometimes to the same situation. And that is asking myself, who is controlling me? Because there are times I really feel like that I'm being controlled.
Yeah.
And so I ask myself that, who is controlling me and how are they controlling me? Well, if they are controlling me, it's because I've given them permission to in the long run.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then also to ask myself, who am I controlling, and or how am I trying to control someone else? Because, you know, again, back with your children, your mate, your coworkers, we may be so trying to get them to do it this way when another way may would have gotten a desired result. It just wasn't exactly with the 1, 2, 3 that I would have had it done.
Yeah.
And so how am I trying to control them? And am I willing to just take my hands off of it? And even in those that may be trying to control me, you know, it's like trying to pick up water. I mean, you can't pick up water. I mean, you know, if you couldn't reach your hand out and try to pick it up. Well, if we give up the mentality of you're trying to control me, it just gives such a freedom.
Oh, yeah.
Such a freedom.
Yeah.
Such a freedom.
Yeah. Right.
And it's
yeah, people don't realize how freeing that is. And it's a matter of try it and see what it feels like, because you don't have to control everything that's going on around you. And I admit I am a control freak. I can get very obsessive compulsive and have my way, and I think things need to be done. And my husband and I, he'll give me that look, and I'll know right away. Oh, that's okay. You do it your way. But I have to be reminded. But that's okay. It all is in developing that relationship to help me to improve, help me to start, because that's still in my genetic makeup, that I'm going to do that, and I'm going to have my own way that I think it needs to be done. And you start doing it your way, and my first thought is, oh no, you're doing it wrong. But no, you do it your way. This is what the end result is that we want. However you get there is fine with me.
Or if it's not fine with me, big deal.
Right.
Even if you do mess up royally, big deal.
Yeah.
And so who am I controlling, and how am I trying to control them? And then who is controlling me, and how are they trying to control? And sometimes it is that look.
Yeah, it is.
And so we can realize that look is a means of control. If I don't buy into it, it's not effective.
Mm-hmm.
Or it begins to weaken. Sometimes we try strategy and say, I tried that once and it didn't work. Mm-hmm. Well, you've been trying your way 592 times and it hadn't worked either. So how about you pick a little WD-40 and oil up this new way of thinking about it and looking at it and seeing that, because everything has a learning curve. And as we begin to learn to not take whatever personally, or to choose to make a choice not to be offended by, it begins a little bit easier.
And that is very freeing too,
to
not get offended by things, and to allow people to say what they want to say. And it's like, well, okay, thank you for that. I hadn't really looked at it that way. But it's their opinion, and you have to believe them.
And, if they accuse you of being so controlling, well, thank you for pointing that out, because, you won't be controlled, and I'll give up. Thank you. I will just step away from that. And, it's.
How do you introduce the difference between control and persuasion?
Well, I guess everything in the long run comes up with the end results. And the end results are not always measurable immediately.
If you're trying to convince somebody else of something, just convince them, persuade them, but you're not controlling them. Obviously, they make the decision. But, there are times where you have an idea that may be different from somebody else's behavior, and you're just trying to open their mind to another way of dealing it. And I consider it persuasion, but they think it's control.
Well, possibly. The thing of it is that persuasion happens only when another person is willing to be persuaded.
Sure, right.
And so it's being aware within ourselves that they're not going there, so I'm going to back off. And maybe next week, when this topic comes up again, I can broach it, and they may have thought about it even though they didn't know they were thinking about it.
Right.
It goes back to one of the words that we looked at not too long ago, was sebriate. Now that's where it's our unconscious thinking. It's the thing that we become aware of, but then it sinks to the bottom and we don't realize we're thinking about it later on. And when it comes up again, we've got a new idea on it. We don't even know. It's a problem solving that leads to a solution.
Hopefully.
Hopefully.
But most of the time, the topic won't come up unless you bring it up yourself.
What's possible?
The other person's not going to bring it up because you're trying to persuade them to whatever, quit smoking or whatever it is,
but you can't.
they're not going to bring it up. You have to bring it up.
But we can't make them do something that they don't want to do. I mean,
Well, sure.
smoking is one of those things. Everybody know, even smokers know that it's hazardous to their health to smoke.
Right.
And they're still choosing to do it, and in fact you're trying to persuade them not to, or even given the logic behind it about how hazardous it is to your health. People don't care about the logical reasoning for it. I mean,
sometimes.
Maybe that was abandoned.
Sometimes. A lot of times they don't. But then you can change the topic to, instead of saying that, put it back on you. I care about you. I'm concerned about your health, and I don't want to lose you. And it really saddens me to see you smoke.
And although there does come a time whenever we can be more enough in control of ourselves and give the liberty to the other person to self-destruct. I mean, just kind of step aside, but still have relationship with them in the process. And then as we begin to do that, but which is more important, relationship or being right?
Yeah. And
when you go for relationship, sometimes they'll begin to say, oh, wait a minute. Maybe Jerry was right. Maybe he was, or maybe he had a valid point. Whether they change or not, it's our personal freedom to change or to not change.
And I think when you put the responsibility on them for their health, instead of my being the one to tell you to quit smoking and to stop eating that way or whatever, then I'm the policeman, and I'm the one who is I'm really taking responsibility of your health there. Whether I'm doing it consciously or not. But when I let go of that and say, it's your life, you need to be in control of your life. All I can do is let you know that it bothers me. I think you're hurting yourself, but you're the one who's going to have to suffer the consequences.
And quite often, whenever we want to get into that persuasion, we may think it's persuasion, but it goes into the 7 deadly habits.
Right.
Nagging and
But if you look at it, really using the connecting or the caring habits, it really is a form of manipulation, because you really are trying to persuade them to do something, but you're doing it in a way where you're not criticizing or complaining. You're doing it in a more positive manner. But if you really look at it, you are trying to persuade them to do something different.
You are, but you're doing it in such a way that it gives personal freedom.
Yeah.
To either to or not to agree or to disagree, to self-destruct or to take a baby step to think differently.
Yeah.
And then also, sending good wishes, prayers, whatever. There does come a time that, okay, we can not talk about this anymore because it leads to a non-relatable situation in both of us, in all of us.
Mm-hmm.
But there never does come a time when we have to stop thinking about those things and how am I trying to control or how am I being controlling, and also sending well wishes to everyone. I know whenever I see people littering, whether it's throwing something out, I'm so sorry that in Texas they did have these. You could take their license plate and the number of the car, the license plate, and you could write in. You could go online and put when and where that you witnessed it, and they would send them a real nice letter that you were observed trashing. But they don't do that anymore. But you know what? I am so convinced that the invisible is so much more real than the visible. So when I see someone dumping or putting a dirty diaper out that they just changed their child or whatever, I just say this little prayer for the whole world that we would all be neat, that we would stick it in our pocket until we get to a trash can. That instead of littering our highways, go ahead and throw it down in the, this recyclable can, go ahead and put it on your, throw it in the floor, and then when you get home, clean your truck out, clean your car out. And it's called being a responsible citizen. It's going back to civility and caring for the whole world. And it all starts with us. you know, instead of condemning, it is praying for, it is sending forth a little conviction on them, that they'll have this conviction that, oh no, maybe I can pick it up and throw it away somewhere rather than throwing it on the ground.
Yeah.
And that applies to every topic.
Yeah. That brings up in my neighborhood, my pet peeve is those dog walkers who have the decency to collect it in a bag, but then they leave the bag on the street, and you're like, well, who's coming after you to pick that up? Okay, yeah, you took the one step to bag it up, and it was kind of interesting the other day, a few months back. We have a vacant lot next to ours, but it's wooded, and we kept it natural. It's our property, and one time somebody had bagged up, their dog's remains and put it in a very nicely and neatly with a lot of other rocks, so you couldn't really even tell it was there. And I said, well, this person sure did go through a lot of trouble to make it, not appear that they did what they did. And I just had to chuckle. I'm like, what's going through their mind?
Our creative system is very renewable, and it just gets more and more creative. But let's create toward the positive, toward the good for all of mankind. And the freedom that we want others to have, let's, we give what we get. And I mean, even something like being thankful that at least they bagged it up. Right. At least it was bagged. Oh, there's a puppy.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys were talking about dogs, and I got to show you.
Okay.
This is Panda.
Panda.
Panda's not used to being on TV. But
yeah, you're a dog lover, huh?
Well, you can't just talk about dogs. You got to show them on your show.
Well, yeah, you had me show you mine the other day.
Doggy.
Yeah.
He's not sleeping here today. He's he probably doesn't need anything from me.
This is my teddy bear.
Okay. Right.
So our time is coming together. I'll give one more thought, and then Jan, if you want to wrap it up with anything.
Okay.
Is the fact that personal freedom, if we want personal freedom, it's been given to us. I mean, we are free will agents. We have the right to say yes, to say no. And if we want that, I mean, it is a gift. We've been gifted with us. But we have to use that gift. We can't keep it bottled up.
Yeah.
And so, and we need to give to others the same freedom that we want for ourselves. So if we want to make our own decisions, then we have to have that personal freedom to let them make their own decisions.
Mm-hmm.
So do it in a way that I can still care about you, or I choose to, and that's another decision also in a free will thing, is to choose to care about the person.
Right. And it's a give and take, and you need to get feedback from each other in the relationship, and let people know when there's things that bother you, and talk about it in a friendly way. Just let's discuss it. Because I don't want to hold this thing inside of me, because I want this relationship to work. I want us to be happy. I want to be happy. So I need to deal with those things that are holding me back, and there's nobody else who can make me happy. I have to decide what needs to be done, and we'll work together on it, and life is good.
And thank you, Jerry and Panda, for being with us on air.
Yeah.
All the rest of you that will be tuning in later.
All right. Bye-bye. We'll see you next week.